The North Korean leader's powerful sister Kim Yo-jong uses President Yoon's words to justify the regime enhancing its nuclear forces. The South Korean military calls Kim's comments ridiculous. President Yoon calls the attack on opposition leader Lee Jae-myung an act of terrorism against democracy. Lee is now recovering from surgery. A Hamas deputy leader is reportedly killed in an Israeli drone attack in Beirut, raising concerns over a wider war in the Middle East. It's January 3rd, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin with more hostile rhetoric from Pyongyang. The North Korean leader's powerful sister, Kim Yo-jong, has criticized President Yoon for his New Year's message, justifying the regime enhancing its nuclear forces. The South Korean military calls it ridiculous. Our defense correspondent Kim Yo-jong reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong has sarcastically hit back at President Yoon Suk-yeol's New Year's Day address, which promised a stronger deterrence system with the U.S. this year. In a statement directed at the South Korean president late Tuesday, Kim gave Yoon top credit for making the regime's military stronger. She added that his deterrence plan is justification for the North's plans to enhance its nuclear forces.
North Korea is seeking to secure the legitimacy of advancing its nuclear capabilities through President Yoon Suk-yeol's words and actions. It can be assessed that the more President Yoon strengthens extended deterrence against North Korea, the more North Korea will try to advance its nuclear capabilities.
Kim Yo-jong said security anxiety has become a part of everyday life in South Korea thanks to Yoon. She also noted that the North's military activities, which had been restricted for years under the September 19th Inter-Korean Military Agreement, could thrive once again thanks to South Korea's decision to partially suspend the agreement. Kim also made comparisons between President Yoon and his predecessor Moon Jae-in, who she called a brilliant and cunning person, but also said the North had wasted time due to Moon's peace drive. But Kim said Yoon had enabled the regime to magnify what was lost during the Moon administration by more than 20 times. In response to the statement, South Korea's defense ministry on Wednesday strongly condemned Kim's words, saying that it is nothing more than a ridiculous argument and compared the North to a criminal who committed a crime because of innocent citizens or the police. The deputy spokesperson for the Unification Ministry also criticized the regime's, quote, scheme, blaming South Korea for causing tension on the peninsula and distorting the current situation of the government and the head of state. Choi Min-jang, Arirang News.
South Korea's Navy has performed this year's first gunfire training today in waters off all three coasts of the country. The Navy released a statement saying the drill was held to strengthen military readiness amid North Korean provocations. The training was conducted simultaneously by the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Fleets and included maritime gunfire and maneuver training by 30 Navy ships and 3 aircraft. South Korea's Chief of Naval Operations Yang Yong-mo said it's important to clearly acknowledge the serious security situation amid North Korea's continued provocations. The chief added the basis of military readiness comes from the strong willingness to lay down one's life to protect the nation's sea. North Korea remains a major security concern for the Yoon administration as it enters 2024, as thus broader economic stability amid the presence of external variables. Our presidential correspondent Oh Soo-young touches upon some of the pending tasks ahead.
South Korea's diplomacy in 2024 will focus on building up minilateral networks, small coalitions of like-minded countries, to overcome risks to national and economic security. First, tackling North Korea's growing nuclear threat, President Yoon Suk-yeol will continue building up close security ties with the United States, adding an unprecedented nuclear dimension. After launching a new bilateral nuclear consultative group last year, the allies are expected to produce nuclear response guidelines by June to prepare for a possible nuclear provocation by Pyongyang, as well as launch nuclear response drills in their annual joint military training. On a trilateral basis with Japan, based on their Camp David summit last August, Yoon will continue efforts to ramp up military cooperation against North Korea's threats and broader joint initiatives for peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. Next on economic security, Yoon will strive to expand South Korea's export markets, striking up new trade deals and partnerships to secure supply chains of materials that are critical to future industries like semiconductors, secondary batteries, defense and digital solutions. However, external factors could pose challenges for Seoul. First, the US presidential race in November has caused concern among its allies that the possible return of Donald Trump could once again undermine America's global security commitments, from South Korea and Japan's trilateral cooperation with Washington to Ukraine and NATO countries. Also, ongoing US-China tensions, wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, and the continued rise of nationalism could further hinder global trade and cooperation to address shared challenges like climate change, the social impact of digital technology, and the development of the global South.
If and when Trump comes back to the White House, there will be a great need for other countries, the current allies of the United States, to work together even more closely. So these are all the actions being taken, efforts being made by all players around the world, with the possible new face of the United States government in mind. And so it's really critical for Korea to strengthen its cooperation with these kind of key allies, going beyond the traditional allies like Japan and the United States.
Thus, through his summitry last year, Yoon called for global solidarity and a rules-based world order, pledging Seoul's contributive diplomacy to strengthen cooperation for freedom, peace and prosperity. He's also expanded South Korea's minilateral networks of partners for defense cooperation and technological development. In 2024, South Korea will host the third Summit for Democracy, first initiated by President Joe Biden, to address threats to freedom, the rule of law and human rights across societies, along with 2 follow-up summits on the safe development of artificial intelligence. The country has also begun its 2-year term as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. Sensing an opportunity amid crises to expand its role in the world as a crucial security and economic partner, Seoul will continue its efforts to become a global pivotal state. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Moving on, opposition party leader Lee Jae-myung is recovering from surgery in an intensive care unit following a knife attack to the neck earlier on Tuesday. Our political correspondent Shin Se-byuk has the latest.
Following a 2-hour jugular vein reconstruction surgery on Tuesday evening, opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung is currently in recovery in the intensive care unit at Seoul National University Hospital. Lee has regained consciousness, but only family members are allowed to visit him as of now. The DP leader was stabbed in the neck early on Tuesday after a tour of the construction site of a new airport in Busan. He was initially taken to Busan National University Hospital, but was later airlifted to Seoul at his family's request. A male suspect was arrested at the scene and has been identified as a man born in 1957, surnamed Kim. The police are likely to request an arrest warrant as early as Wednesday for the assailant on charges of attempted murder. On Wednesday, the Democratic Party convened an emergency assembly to discuss the party's future operations. After the meeting, they announced plans to establish a specialized response unit focusing on the recent assault on their party leader. This team will closely monitor the progress of the investigation, address the circulation of false information to tackle any secondary victimization, and develop strategies for future safety measures. The DP leadership, during a separate meeting earlier on Wednesday, called the assault, quote, a blatant challenge to democracy.
What happened yesterday was completely out of place in a democratic society. This act of terror on Lee represents a blatant challenge and a direct threat to democracy. We call on the authorities to conduct a swift and comprehensive investigation.
As for the investigation into the stabbing incident, prosecutors have set up a team to look into the attack. The National Police Agency has also formed a 69-member special investigation team to conduct a thorough and swift inquiry. Separately, the police have also formed a dedicated protection team for key political figures, including party leaders, following the recent assault on Lee. This is a departure from the usual protocol, where personal security teams are typically deployed for such individuals only during the official campaign period, starting 14 days before an election. This year's general elections begin their campaign period on March 28th. 신세벽, Arirang News.
And President Yoon labeled the shocking attack on the opposition leader an act of terrorism against liberal democracy as he hosted a New Year's gathering today for key state officials. He also vowed to do more in 2024 to improve the living of the people. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon has more.
President Yoon Suk-yeol at a New Year's gathering with key state officials on Wednesday expressed the will to work harder towards improving people's livelihoods. The attack on Lee Jae-myung was also addressed. President Yoon acknowledged the main opposition party leader's absence due to being hospitalized and labeled the attack a form of terrorism.
테러라고 하는 것은 그 어떤 것이든 간에 피해자에 대한 가해 행위, 범죄 행위를 넘어서서 인간의 자유를 억압하고 자유사회를 지향하는 우리 모두의 적이라고 할 수 있습니다. 자유민주주의의 적입니다.
Other leaders of the nation's constitutional institutions also addressed the seriousness of the incident and encouraged those in attendance to work towards improvement.
All members of the judiciary branch commit to never tolerating violence in any case and to making the utmost efforts to ensure that trials are conducted solely according to law and principles.
We hope that the government and the National Assembly can unite people to overcome this crisis and that this year will be one of bold change, thereby creating new hope.
Addressing the 200 in attendance, President Yoon said all efforts will be toward improving people's livelihood and called for close cooperation across all sectors. 3 ordinary citizens who showed extraordinary courage and warmth in 2023 received praise. This includes a nurse who was off duty when she saved an unconscious person at a department store, and a high school student who invented a tool to check whether a car crash was due to unintended sudden acceleration.
우리가 이런 시민을 격려하고 또 이런 분들의 정신을 널리 국민들이 공감할 수 있도록 하는 것이 우리 민생과 또 국민이 행복한 사회를 만드는데 정말 의미가 있는 거라고 생각합니다.
In the meantime, President Yoon Suk-yeol also gave appointment letters to the new ministers who took office following the recent cabinet reshuffle. This includes the new Deputy Prime Minister of Finance, Choi Sang-mok, and Minister of Patriots and Veterans Affairs, Kang Jung-hae. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
A suspected Israeli drone attack killed a Hamas deputy leader on Tuesday in Lebanon's capital, Beirut. This adds to worries that the war could expand beyond the Gaza enclave. Lee Jae-myung reports.
A suspected Israeli attack in Beirut's southern suburb of Dahieh on Tuesday night has killed senior Hamas official Saleh al-Arouri, known to be second in command in Hamas's Politburo. The drone attack killed a total of 6 and injured many more, Lebanese and Palestinian security sources said. Video from the scene in a stronghold of the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah showed smoke fuming out of a heavily damaged building. Mark Regev, an advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, told MSNBC that Israel had not taken responsibility for this attack, but that whoever did it, it must be clear that this was not an attack on the Lebanese state. Hamas condemned the killing, calling it a, quote, cowardly assassination. In the West Bank city of Ramallah, hundreds of Palestinians took to the streets and marched in protest. The attack is also raising the potential risk of the conflict spreading beyond the Gaza enclave. Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati issued a statement late Tuesday condemning the attack, calling it a new Israeli crime. He said the explosion, quote, aims to usher Lebanon into a new phase of confrontations following the daily ongoing attacks. An expert in the Middle East says the conflict could extend over a longer period.
The war has come to expand as Israel decides to get a firm grip on Hamas and Hezbollah. As for how long this conflict will continue, it worries me that it's more likely to continue mid to long term rather than end shortly.
Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary General called Tuesday's strike extremely worrying. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
Over in Japan, casualties from Monday's earthquake continued to mount with over 60 deaths and more than 370 injured. Choi Soo-hyung has the latest.
At least 65 deaths have now been reported from the earthquake that hit Ishikawa Prefecture in the west of Japan on the first day of 2024. According to Japanese media outlets on Wednesday, more than 450 aftershocks have been monitored following the magnitude 7.6 quake. An estimated 370 people were also injured in Ishikawa Prefecture and neighboring areas. Currently, over 32,000 people are staying in shelters, and the damage from the earthquake is severe. Shortly after the earthquake, more than 200 buildings in Wajima City were completely destroyed by fire. Nearby Suju City was hit by a tsunami, submerging areas 100 meters inland. Major roads were cracked down the middle in places, with some cars falling into holes caused by the quake. Many rescue workers with the Japanese Self-Defense Forces have been trying to rescue people from collapsed buildings, and supplies are being transported using helicopters. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says there were more than 130 urgent requests for rescue from collapsed buildings, and it's a race against time.
We will also strengthen our system by more than doubling the number of rescue dogs in the self-defense forces and police, and will do our best to provide emergency life-saving rescue.
Local media outlets say casualties are expected to rise and that there is still a chance of more aftershocks. Moreover, a total of 50 millimeters of rain is forecast until Thursday, raising concerns about landslides. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Last year, there was an unprecedented number of people being forcibly displaced, driven by the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, regional conflicts, and natural disasters. And there are many people around the world working to make things better. Chun Hae-kyung, the head of the UN Refugee Agency's Korea office, is one of them. Our Song Yoo-jin listened to her insights on the global refugee situation and also her inspiring personal story.
A very challenging year. That's how Chun Hae-kyung, the representative of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees Korea, describes the year 2023. Last year, the world saw a record number of more than 114 million people displaced, including refugees and asylum seekers.
We have seen the situation in Ukraine continue to evolve. We have seen Sudan evolving a situation there, Gaza, as we still see on the news, and then also like earthquakes.
As the first Korean national to lead the UNHCR's Korean office, Ms. Chun brings over 2 decades of experience in refugee and humanitarian work. Her journey began with listening to stories about the Korean War growing up.
Our parents' generation worked so hard to build the country, right? So, and I grew up outside Korea when I was a child, so I was also very much interested in minority issues, right? So I did study refugee migration issues, and I think naturally I ended up in the UN.
Looking ahead, she hopes things will get better in the new year.
Hopefully, politics and humanitarian assistance can be divided so that we could work in the areas where people need our assistance.
And she sees a significant role for South Korea in addressing these challenges.
It has substantially increased its ODA share, and there has been very positive pledges to UNHCR, but also to other agencies, right, and organizations. And also we see that with the Republic of Korea joining the UN Security Council 24 and 25.
Beyond governmental efforts, last December, 8 religious groups in Korea submitted the first ever joint pledge of its kind to the UNHCR's Global Refugee Forum. From this year, Ms. Chun will take up a new role as the director of the UNHCR Regional Bureau for Asia and the Pacific. Describing her term in Korea as rewarding, she recalls working on the country's lack of universal birth registration.
If you're a foreign parents born baby here, you know, like you don't, the Korean government doesn't register you, right? So there have been a lot of work in the past years, and you know, related legislation has been under discussion now. So the reason why I started joining the UN, and 20-something years later, I come back to Korea and I am working on the same issues, right?
Senses the gravity of the greater responsibility, Ms. Chun says she is ready.
I think in the region we have many states with different interests, but when it comes to refugees, as it was shown at the Global Refugee Forum, hopefully we can come together and I can be a constructive bridge to do that.
송유진, Arirang News.
The priority with regard to economic policy this year for Korea is the building of stable livelihoods for the people. During a party government consultative meeting on this Wednesday, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok added that the government plans to achieve this goal by focusing on 4 key areas: ensuring the costs of living, tackling potential risks, creating a dynamic market environment, and adapting policies for future generations. He also touched upon broader concerns amid the burden of high prices and high interest rates on the public, and maintained an overall optimistic outlook with regard to Korea's economic rebound for the new year. The nation's online shopping sales saw the biggest on-year gain in 15 months thanks to major promotional events. Statistics Korea said on Wednesday that online sales in November totaled over 20.8 trillion Korean won, or nearly $16 billion. That's 13% higher than in the same month last year. The agency attributed the growth to the country's biggest annual retail event, the Korea Sale Festa, which was held for 20 days. By item, sales of travel and transportation services led to the overall growth, while sales in clothing rose to an all-time high of over $1.7 billion. Shifting gears, the South Korean men's national football team arrived in Abu Dhabi early on Wednesday morning for a training camp ahead of the Asian Cup that kicks off later this month in Qatar. The Korea Football Association said the team, led by head coach Jurgen Klinsmann, was later joined by some of the players based in Europe, including Son Heung-min of Tottenham Hotspur and Hwang Hee-chan of Wolverhampton Wanderers. Paris Saint-Germain midfielder Lee Gang-in will be the last to join on Friday. As part of the team's preparations in Abu Dhabi, South Korea will play Iraq on Saturday in a friendly. The team will then travel to Qatar on January 10th with their first Group E match against Bahrain on January 15th. South Korea will try to win their first Asian Cup since 1960.
There will be a brief cold snap tomorrow morning. In fact, Seoul will drop to -3 degrees Celsius. However, daily highs will be similar to today's, so no worries about the cold spells. Another frigid spell will come around this weekend. It will not feel as freezing as a cold wave of -10 degrees a few weeks ago, but will feel relatively cold. It's easy to catch a cold in this back and forth weather. Please take care. As smoke from overseas gradually flows in again, air quality is likely to get worse than today. From tonight, the concentration of ultrafine dust will come thicker in these Jeollado provinces and Jeju Island. Tomorrow, most regions will see bad levels of ultrafine dust. Wearing an ultrafine dust mask is very important. Most regions will see minus figures for the morning hours. Seoul and Gyeongju will be at -3 degrees. Highs in Seoul will get up to 6 degrees. Gyeongju and Busan, 10 degrees Celsius. The sub-zero cold is expected to return from the weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.